Humanity deserves a solution for centralized power monopolies.
The idea of decentralization is that potentially every single person on the planet can contribute to what's happening.
We have not scratched the surface of intelligence. Elon has had to get debt, raise venture capital, do all these super expensive things to build Grok. No single company on the planet has a monopoly on AI talent, in the same way that no single company on the planet has a monopoly on intelligence. No one has a monopoly on that. Mark Andreessen famously says, software is eating the world. All these technologies are getting transformed to become software-based. Now, AI is eating software. James, it's great to be here with you again.
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this all day, just reading about the different subnets that I'm not necessarily familiar with. People don't realize the deep dive on Tao is immense because it is used by a lot of different groups of people, a lot of different companies, a lot of people with different AI interests and needs. And so it's kind of unbelievable all the things you can do. And so I'm glad we're getting together to, do this podcast where one by one we're going to talk about all the possible functionality currently on Bittensor and what could possibly be in the future, plus maybe some of the tokenomics of these subnets and Tao itself and so on.
It's an extremely exciting time in the world for AI, for computing. Elon and the XAI team announced Grok 4 today, which is a big deal. We're talking on July 10th, 2025. And Bitcoin also just had a new all-time high earlier of $113,000, which is a pretty momentous milestone. I tweeted about 30 minutes ago something I think is interesting. Elon's data center in Memphis, Tennessee, where he's building Grok 4, 5, and all the future generations of Grok, has about 200,000 GPUs. And the AI that Elon unveiled, he believes is PhD level in almost every possible field already today. And he believes it'll be inventing new physics in a year. So he believes he can get the models that Grok is building to do von Neumann, Einstein, Szilard, Bohr, Feynman level physics discoveries.
This is actually a really interesting starting point. So, and it kind of underlines the difference between centralized AI and decentralized AI. So Elon Musk has spent billions. Like when you say 200,000 NVIDIA GPUs, each GPU costs $40,000. And so on the one hand, that's great. When you're centralized, you could spend that kind of money, you can raise that kind of money. But obviously, the average person is not going to spend billions of dollars to build an AI model. But as a quick comparison, how many GPUs, and by the way, providing GPUs is not the only thing Bittensor does. There's many things, but this is a big use case. How many GPUs could Bittensor have access to? How many does it have access to now on its various subnets?
This is a really great question, and I'll just directly answer it. There's about 20,000 GPUs, roughly speaking, on the Bittensor network, and they're all in a collection of subnets. Subnet 64 has maybe most of them, maybe 10,000. Subnet 4 has thousands. Subnet 3, I think is around the neighborhood of thousands. Subnet 51 is, I think, also almost 10,000 or close to 10,000. So you add all this up, and it's more than 10%, might even be 20% of all of the compute that Elon has had to spend tens of billions of dollars acquiring. Like sending Jensen billions of dollars, negotiating with all of the real estate infrastructure, deployment, server management people, all of the costs. And the Bittensor network has permissionlessly incentivized a significant portion of computational resource and capacity while spending zero on CapEx. Like Elon has had to get debt, raise venture capital, like do all these like super expensive things to build Grok and to get to Grok 4 PhD level AI at every field, every topic. Linguistics, fringe, historical studies or something, and then math, physics, right? Like really impressive, super impressive. But Elon is vertically integrating everything: data acquisition, data cleansing, computational power, compute, GPU compute, fine tuning and safety, which is, politicizing the model effectively. But his main value proposition, his main pitch to all of us is maximally truth seeking AI, maximally going to seek the truth. That's the most important thing. Whose truth? Whose truth, Elon? Your truth?
And so that's the point, is that anybody could come in and use Bittensor's resources, and those resources include those 20 to 100,000 GPUs you just mentioned in aggregate. Those resources include learning models. So if someone has a data set but doesn't have the AI learning model, they could feed it into the appropriate subnet to create their own AI model. And here's an important thing. You mentioned Jensen Huang. Elon obviously is the biggest customer of NVIDIA. You and I can't be customers of NVIDIA. We can't go to NVIDIA. There's no NVIDIA store where we can say, can we buy one GPU? They'll go to the back of the line because Elon's first, Google's second, Facebook's third, on and on. Walmart probably can't buy NVIDIA GPUs. It's a long line in front of Walmart. And so the question is, if you're even a Fortune 500 company, or if you're just a random individual, you can use the GPUs that are being loaned into a system like Bittensor. I say loan, but that's not quite the right word. But those people who donate their spare GPU cycles get rewarded in Tao tokens. Now, there are subnets within Bittensor that just provide kind of GPU access, and they're kind of the same size as Akash, which is another decentralized crypto that provides GPUs. And yet Akash is worth $500 million. And this one subnet, I forget which number it is now. It's one of the top 10, is maybe valued at like less than $10 million at the moment, and yet has almost the exact same capabilities as Akash.
Actually more. Believe you're talking about Subnet 51, or Subnet 4. They're similar.
Subnet 4.
They're compute subnet. They're compute subnet. They offer compute, just like you said. And they're kind of like CoreWeave or Azure or GCP. They offer up the compute and you can rent it. And to get to a point where you've gotten an incentive so well defined that it attracts thousands of compute nodes on that marketplace to be priced to perfection, because the alpha token of that subnet provides a dynamic CME commodities exchange-like financialization of the asset. But it's directly tied to the consumption of the asset. Unlike CoreWeave's stock price, how is their stock price actually connected to the fundamentals of renting racks of GPUs from CoreWeave? It's not.
Right. And here's the amazing thing. I was talking to a company that I'm an investor in. They build data centers for other companies. And I was asking him, hey, do you know anything about Bittensor? What are you doing with Bittensor? And he said, funny you should ask. We're encouraging all of our customers to basically be miners on subnets like Subnet 4. So not only does Subnet 4 solve, let's say, my problem if I want to build an AI model using, a lot of GPUs that I can't afford, but if I'm a provider of GPUs to my customers, like if I'm building data centers, I can just have a passive stream of income, or let my customers have a passive stream of income by convincing them to mine Tau on Subnet 4, for instance, by donating their spare GPU cycles. Like, it solves so many problems that, CoreWeave does not solve, or Akash even does not solve.
The really beautiful thing about mining, when you say mining in the context of Bittensor, is, people are, because Bitcoin is becoming more mainstream, like Bitcoin is like this asset class now. So it's like more familiar to people. When you say Bitcoin mining or you hear Bitcoin mining, people are thinking it's like expensive electricity, maybe it's environmentally unfriendly, different things. And Bitcoin Network provides proof of work for that computational hash rate, the SHA-256 hash that you need to solve on the Bitcoin network to earn Bitcoin. That's the proof of the work. It's really important. Bittensor does proof of useful work. Bittensor says, mine a GPU commodity, or mine better chip design, or mine inference, or mine training a model, or mine making a data set widely available. That's there to get, like training data, for example. And when you mine Bittensor, you're doing something useful for the world, for humanity.
Right. Like every application that somebody might mine or deploy onto Bittensor, there's a reason for it. So for instance,
Yes.
let's say I have a data set of you know, all let's say private anonymous patient records, and I have 20 million of these patient records, completely anonymous. So forget the privacy issues; it's completely anonymous. Now I could put this there. I don't even know for sure. You would know, Joe. Like, there's probably a subnet out there where I could be a miner by providing this data set that other people could then build their own AI models on.
Subnet 13, well, Dataverse, Subnet 13, by a UK-based team that's very talented called Macrocosmos. Subnet 13 rewards people for producing training data from social sources. So you, for example, you want to get the fire hose of data off of X, off of Twitter. Subnet 13 will reward you for getting that data and producing it to the subnet. So you can take that data as a digital commodity and train AI models using Subnet 3 or Subnet 9 and other training subnets.
So let me ask you a question. Like, tell me who was a potential user of Subnet 9. So there's all these data sets in Subnet 9. I'm a user. A, how do I find out about, what's on Subnet 9? And B, what is the typical user? What are they building?
Developers that use Amazon Web Services are the same people that would want to use these subnets.
So like, what am I building an AI model if I use Subnet 9? Like, am I building a front end application?
Mostly building your own model, fine tuning a model, training a model. You need training data, and the data is presented to the model, and then that's transformed into the weights. And then the weights are the information compression representation of the data, right? On the neural network weights. You need the training data. The training data is super valuable, very, very important. A lot of training data is trapped in hospital systems, to use your example of the healthcare anonymized healthcare data. A lot of very valuable data is trapped in banks, transaction history, transaction data, right? So a lot of that data is very valuable, but it's not publicly available, not widely available.
And so what do you think, like, what type of data can I get on Subnet 9? So I want to train my own AI model, build an AI company. What kind of data can I potentially get on Subnet 9? Dataverse.
Let's go to the website and check it out. Subnet 13 is Dataverse. Well, I'm going to share my screen and you can check this out. And this is really cool. Subnet 13 is data collection and storage. So we can check out their dashboard. Their dashboard here. And it's high quality data sets from Reddit and X. And they've been able to get 55 billion rows of data, hundreds of data sets, and they are incentivizing miners to produce 50 million rows of data per day. They have tens of billions of rows of data from Reddit and from X. This is very impressive. This is actually very impressive.
So potentially, for instance, and I have to be somewhat sophisticated technically for to use this subnet, but I could basically take all this data and figure out which combination of Reddit posts and tweets are correlated to which stock movements, for instance, and I could build a stock trading model.
And it's getting that data scraped directly from the websites, so it's fresh, relevant, very up to date, and This potential subnet is sort of disruptive, right? Because you've got a lot of large internet providers that don't make their data available over their API. And so this subnet actually produces an incentive for that data to exist as a common open source commodity for the world. That's pretty powerful.
So people go in and they say, "Oh, I'm really good at web scraping. I have software that could do web scraping. I'm going to basically in real time scrape Reddit data all day long. This subnet Dataverse will reward me in their alpha tokens." And now other users could say, "Hey, I work for a big hedge fund, but I don't have, a bunch of NVIDIA GPUs. I don't have all this Reddit data. It's not my expertise. I have all the stock market data, and I have a way to look at what correlates with stock movements. And so I'm going to use all this data to build my trading system."
Bingo. You could be that person. You could be a mid-sized business. You could be a startup. You could be a startup that's like, in order for you to build the infrastructure to scrape Reddit and X, it'll cost me $2 million. I'm a startup. I don't have that much money. I got 10. Maybe I have 5. I'm not going to spend $2 million because my app, it's not related to all the scraping infrastructure. I just want the data. I want the data. Of course, I'm going to use Subnet 13 alpha token and allocate, $10,000 to the alpha token or $5,000. And I get access to all the latest rows of data and miners on Subnet 13 are producing. That's the power of Bittensor. It's a disruptive new language of capitalism that produces market efficiencies and commoditizes the previously scarce and transforms it into the infinitely abundant, effectively.
I love this way of putting it because what's relatively scarce? Well, NVIDIA GPUs or all of X's data or patient records or, AI models that I wouldn't normally have access to because I might not even be a coder. The top subnet right now is Chutes, right? I don't need to be a coder to use Chutes. Let's say I had a website. I'm going to just make this. Let's say I had a website about the Bible. Okay, it's everything you want to know about the Bible. But now I want to put an AI chatbot on my website. So I could go to Chutes. I could basically, they're using DeepSeek or some other open source AI that already has read the Bible. And I can say, look, for any question I ask, I want a response from the AI that Chutes is using, that the miners who are providing the AI are using. And I want it to be no more than like 300 words. I want you to cite like at least 3 quotes and what verse from the Bible it comes from. And you could answer any questions about the Bible. And then they'll give me a widget that I could put on my website so people don't even know they're going to Bittensor, this decentralized universe. They don't know that they're going to it. And now I have a Bible chatbot on my website. And I'm paying, I looked at the prices. I'm paying basically about 1/50th what I would pay the OpenAI API.
You also said something that I think is really profound, which is people don't need to know that they're using Bittensor to benefit from it.
And that's key.
That's very important. How do you think about the lack of needing to know about Bittensor in terms of the mainstream impact to consumers?
I think it's extremely important. I don't know. I don't want let's say I'm building an AI business or some AI front end. Like let's say I'm building a customer chatbot. I don't want my customers to even think about Bittensor just because any friction is bad for a business. Any friction is loses customers. So if people suddenly, and I think this is something that's the Subnets and Bittensor is learning as a community. I mean, it's all relatively young. Is that you don't want people to have to go to GitHub to figure out how to use your business. You don't want people to have to I think even one of the subnets I was looking at, you have to buy 0.1 Tao to use it. I just want to use my credit card and pay $30. And I don't need to know in the background it's being converted to 0.1 Tao. So I think that it's very important that every subnet be easy to use, and some are there and some are not. And the less technical knowledge, the better in every way. Sometimes you need technical knowledge, but the least amount, the better.
I totally agree with you. And we're not really seeing a ton of applications on Bittensor. What we're seeing is infrastructure, APIs. So there are fire hoses of technology. Like there's like some specific technology that this like interface is providing, but it's not fully polished product. That's the ingredients of a nice meal you're going to make. You're going to have like some, some fish and, some garnishing and vegetables, and you've got, ways of making that. And those are ingredients. Bittensor is ingredients, the raw ingredients for digital commodities. And the way in which they attack the end user consumer is still very abstract, disconnected. They're sort of like not viscerally understanding it, but the people that do understand it are developers. They're technical, they're geeks, and they use the output and they compose them together. What I think we could see more of is application on Bittensor. So like a subnet owner, they should think about building the application, a killer app enabled by their Bittensor subnet commodity.
What are raw ingredients of AI models that in aggregate a lot of these subnets provide? So GPUs is one, kind of large language models that are open source and mostly free are another. Datasets is another.
Yeah. Algorithms. You've got the architecture. You want to get the architecture right. You want to design the architecture right. By the way, there's two subnets. They're not like way in the top 10 because they're more researchy. But one is doing neural architecture search, which basically says we will reward miners for fine-tuning tweaking the math or the attention blocks of a transformer-based neural network. And they sort of like do sort of like experiments and derivations of that algorithmic stack. And when they make a small change that like might be a totally new architecture or just a slightly different architecture, and they get a more performant result compared to the vanilla standard transformer, that's called neural architecture search. You're exploring the space of possibility of other architectures that could improve the model. And then, so you combine that with the training infrastructure, the data, you're saying, compute, and the serving, hosting, the inference. And then you've got a full platform.
And also agentic software. So there's subnets that make agents. So given that, here's the one subnet that has all the Twitter data, maybe here's another subnet which, hey, I want to basically, whenever so-and-so posts, I want to come up with a nice AI generated response right away. So people see my response right. So you can make, your own social media agents on Bittensor using the infrastructure.
I think agentic models for any possible job or task that you want are definitely going to be a really big deal. Because you've got to think about how the world organizes itself today. There's like industries, career paths, jobs, skills. You want to develop your skill and you're skilled in this, like you're a great writer, super talented writer. Or you're a technical person, like into math and computer science. And so you're a programmer. Or you're really great with geometric sort of like structure and aesthetic, and you're an architect and you're like a designer of buildings, and that you have a great skill in that. That's what these agents are going to be like. You're going to need a library of agents that are tailored to the domain in which they're supposed to be like just incredibly skilled at in that particular domain. And you'll need to like organize and chain these together. And this is the extremely important part. You can build your agent with Google or with Elon or with Zuckerberg or with any of the big tech companies, and your agent will be controlled by them. But if you build it on Bittensor, it's controlled by you and it's owned by you. That's pretty cool.
But let me push back. What's wrong with OpenAI making my agent? I mean, I can still put it on my website. People don't even know OpenAI is in the background. I'm just using an API. So it's kind of owned by me still.
The problem is it's actually not owned by you because OpenAI controls the data that the agent is trained on and all of the data that it interacts with because they control the model. And furthermore, you did not have any influence over how priors or the bias or the political leanings of that agent were designed and what it inherited. It inherited all those biases and those kinds of politicized training orientations in the sort of mega god model that it derived itself from, right? So it derived itself from some broader mega god model that the big tech company created that has this kind of like, particular political leaning that's sort of lobotomized in a very specific set of ways, right? And this is complicated. The stuff that I just said's pretty complicated. I would wager mainstream humanity is going to be sensitive to these things. That's just my hypothesis. That's my hypothesis.
Well, but here's like a real practical use case where what you said could be important. So let me ask you if it's important. So let's take my simplistic Bible website where I just used Bittensor to make a AI Bible chatbot, and I had no coding from me at all, no code experience required. Now someone wants to buy it for $1 gazillion, and they say, "Well, do you own this chatbot?" What if Chutes used DeepSeek as kind of the back end AI model to make this chatbot, and now DeepSeek changes its API and it's no longer good? What's going to happen?
The really cool thing about Bittensor is that it is going to make building James Altucher's personal mini God model for you on your entire life history data and all the things that you care about, fully owned and controlled by you in the same way that it's like you hold your Bitcoin.
What if it's using an AI model though? I'm not going to have access, and then that AI model goes away.
It's not going to go away. You will have ownership over the weights and the code of that model, and only you will be able to give, the permission for people to have access to it, right? And you can train it from scratch. You don't need to build on the DeepSeek weights, even though the DeepSeek weights are out there. Training is going to get commoditized. Right now, training is a scarce, highly monopolistic market. Super monopolistic. I mean, there's like 5 companies doing all the training. Like all of them are doing the same thing, but like there's 2 or 3 that are doing most of the training. Training will commoditize as a digital commodity for people that today, in the same way, are walking around with this type of thing in their pocket, and it is equivalent to, in the 1980s or 90s, $5 million to $10 million of compute. Normal people are not going to spend $5 or $10 million on their iPhone. They'll spend $500 on the iPhone, but the amount of compute in this iPhone is $5 to $10 million worth of compute. When I was a kid, pretty crazy.
It is crazy, and so I'm wondering. Let's say NVIDIA GPUs. Let's say that technology is deflationary in the sense that, just like with the iPhone, what you could have done 20 years ago would have cost you $5 million. Now it costs you next $500. So what happens when NVIDIA GPUs become, eventually today's NVIDIA GPUs become super cheap? Because at some point you don't need, just like with the iPhone, you don't really need the latest upgrade. I don't really need to build an AI model on 5 trillion tokens. I just need 100 billion tokens, really, that I need to build my AI model on top of. So what happens when things become super easy for centralized companies to do all the AI you need?
We have not scratched the surface of intelligence. Your question presupposes that there will be a ceiling that we discover on the form factors and the density of intelligence that is possible to harness in the palm of your hand. We have not scratched the surface. Grok 4 used 200,000 GPUs for maybe 6 months of training and fine tuning and billions of dollars in CapEx and, $100 billion equity value in 3 years, whatever it is. And consumers cannot use those weights. They cannot use that AI in the palm of their hand. They have to contact Elon's data centers over the internet to get the data out of Grok's models that it's producing in Tennessee Memphis, Tennessee, right? It's like one location. I mean, you could literally go there and be like, well, I guess inferencing Grok is in one location. They probably have like copies of the weights on different cloud providers and stuff, but like where most of it's emanating is from Tennessee. I think that we're going to be in a world very similar to the iPhone, where you can access genius level, personally owned AI. Like I think the Elon data center weights are so heavy and require so much computation just to inference them, because it's 3 trillion parameters, 3 trillion parameter model, the mixture of experts and they're all chained together and stuff. Like just to inference that model, to ask it a question, to interact with it is so unbelievably expensive that if you need it, press it to something on the size of the palm of your hand, which the ARM and the custom Apple chips on this thing are, they're able to do 200 billion transistors on a chip. And there's probably 30 or 40 chips in this thing. And so, you can run the math, the order of magnitude of floating point operations per second or flops on this thing is a fraction of what is running in that Elon data center, which is hundreds of exaflops of compute, Just for people's knowledge, the government funded national laboratories like Lawrence Livermore, the big Cray supercomputers, like these gigantic national labs, right? The average amount of computation produced by those labs is like 2 exahash or 2 exaflop, 2 exaflops, exahash, the Bitcoin hash rate, 2 exaflop. Elon and XAI in Tennessee, we're talking hundreds of exaflop of compute. What people don't understand more though, is that the Bitcoin network is 20,000 times more compute output than Elon's data center in Tennessee. And Elon's data center in Tennessee is the largest supercomputer on the planet currently in one location in Tennessee.
Your point is that the power of decentralization gets you 20,000 times more powerful than $100 billion value company for trivially less.
Not only that, I'm underselling it. Tens of thousands of times more efficient outputs, yes, but also at 1,000 times less cost.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
The idea with Bittensor is it's the exact same decentralization mechanism and incentive mechanisms as Bitcoin, except now you could scale potentially infinitely larger than what Elon's got.
We can build AGI, ASI. I don't think we're there yet. I think a lot of PhDs are really dumb people. Like they're very smart in some particular domain, but I mean, I don't like PhDs. I like people who are free thinking and creative, and they're very like orthogonal, and they have like 7 specializations instead of 1, right? And largely self-taught people. I would say we're probably 2 or 3 years away from superintelligence in the machine. That's not that long, maybe 5 years. To produce that level of digital machine intelligence in the computer, we need new chips. We need new architectures for the chips. We need different ways of producing energy to run those chips, because we're going to run out of energy in America unless we shift to fusion or plasma or small nuclear reactors everywhere, abundantly everywhere. They have to be everywhere. We won't get there. But what will get there is decentralization, permissionless incentives. And I think we could actually use Bittensor to create superintelligence faster than Elon can create superintelligence.
I agree. And I think, look, the idea of decentralization is that potentially every single person on the planet can contribute to what's happening. Like right now, the limiting factor of a decentralized network like Bittensor is just that people don't know about it. And then they don't know, once they know about it, they don't know how to use it. And there's no front door to Bittensor where it's like, here's where everything is, here's what's needed, here's how you could participate. There's not really like, you know how when the internet first started to get popular, I mean, the internet was around since 1971, but when it first started to get popular was when Mark Andreessen built a front door, a browser in the early 90s called Mosaic, which became Netscape. He built the first web browser where now I could see, oh, here's the internet organized. And I feel like all the, all the capabilities are there, just like all the capabilities were already on the internet, but there was no front door. And I feel like there's not really a good front door to Bittensor right now.
I fully agree with you that we are in the 1990 internet era of Bittensor,
Yeah.
where we need browsers, we need platforms, we need applications, we need developer infrastructure. Right? It's, I think, as big a deal as the internet. Probably a bigger deal than the internet, but I would say as big a deal. Bittensor is as big a deal as the internet, maybe a little bit bigger.
I agree. Like I remember, so in 1995, I started a company making websites, and it was because nobody knew how to make a website then, and there was no WordPress. There was no You had to code your website, and my first client was American Express. They didn't have a website, so I made AmericanExpress.com. That's where we are right now with Bittensor, because everybody is going to use AI. Everyone could make an AI application without using code. Everybody could search all the AIs there, but right now it's just not easy unless you're just using this big monolithic model like, ChatGPT, which is only good for so many things.
We're going to get there. The amount of development and energy in the builder community. I mean, we're talking about 100 plus teams. There's 128 subnets. I think 60 or 70 of them are live. A lot of them are cooking and sort of like building their incentive mechanism, and they're going to launch, and just like a startup. I mean, you go through, you have some funding, you're going to iterate a bit. You've got a month, 2-3 months. And some startups take a year to launch. It's actually not uncommon, but like a lot of startups take a few weeks or a couple months, and then you launch your thing, your product or whatever it is. There's a lot of subnets that are in that, but dozens and dozens of teams have already launched, and they're producing a digital commodity. Mining is happening on their subnets. There's price discovery of their alpha token happening. From DTAO, which was the latest protocol upgrade for Bittensor on Valentine's Day this year, February 14th, until today. So we're like 160 days. Subnets have gone from being worth 0 because the pricing discovery of alpha tokens started, to now being worth fully diluted $10-15 billion, in 4 months, four-ish months. I think that's pretty remarkable. I think it's the first time in the history of blockchain since Bitcoin that this level of activity has been happening.
So basically, when people try to understand what a subnet is, I think there's a very simple way to think of it. It's like a company. It's like an AI company that is managing to use some of these scarce resources that it can now get through Bittensor. So if I wanted to start my own AI model, maybe I need data. So on my subnet, the miners can supply data, and the validators can make sure it's good data. So Bittensor sort of provides the things that will cost a startup a lot of money. Bittensor sort of provides it for free because there are these incentive mechanisms. And so maybe we can go through Chutes and go through just kind of the economics. And also Chutes is one that's easier to understand than a lot of the other subnets.
I'll share my screen and then we can bounce around ever so briefly and then talk about stuff. So I'm in Tao app. This is the FDV that I described. This is the market cap that is the circulating. So FDV is the total value. These are the subnets. So this kind of looks like a decentralized exchange finance kind of like product. And we've got labels. You can see the coding subnets. You can see cryptography.
So just so I understand, that middle column there that started with Chutes and so on, that's all the subnets.
The names of the are here, exactly. So let's go into Chutes. We click Chutes, and their alpha token is priced at $50 currently. They've had a rough time in the last few months. but they're the number one subnet. And if we want to go to their website, click their website, and we go in their website, and you can see serverless AI compute. You can deploy, run, and scale any AI model in seconds. And they give you an account. So they're verifying you because they have a lot of traffic, probably. Verify the human thing. Okay. And you create an account. You can say, create my cold key, whatever. I'm going to go say JJ, JJ15. Create account, continue. Great. So, and now I can see all the models. They've got a lot of models on there. Look at that. There's a lot labeled as hot, which means they're probably very popular.
I see. So these are like, just to explain to everybody,
Yes.
these are like Grok or ChatGPT, but they're open
Right.
source models that Chutes has built the API to.
Correct.
Or the miners provide the models.
Yes, exactly. And I'm looking at the so yeah, these are all the models. And the most popular ones are like DeepSeek, and Hermes, Deep Hermes from News Research, Dolphin, Quen. But if we go to statistics, this is the interesting part. Since December or January last year, the number of tokens they've served. A token is like a couple words. It's not that much data, but the number of tokens they've served. This is super, super impressive. Almost 10 trillion. This is a billion, right? 1,000 billion is a trillion. This is almost 10 trillion.
So a token. I just want people to understand what a token is. A token is like part of a sentence, for instance. It's some output from an AI model that's uniform. So that like an answer might contain like 10 tokens. Like when you ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you back a whole answer, that might have like 10 tokens in it.
Precisely. So this is people talking to the model. They have 440,000 users. Hey, this would be a significant startup, worth maybe $500 million or maybe $1 billion or something, depending on if you monetized the tokens you're serving. And this is also very interesting. How much GPU compute do they have on the subnet, allowing them to run that inference? They have 4,400 H200s. H200s are the pretty powerful Hopper series GPUs. So that's quite a lot of compute. I'm pretty sure if you had to rent that would be millions of dollars per month. So Chutes is millions of dollars per month just in the GPU compute to serve the DeepSeek models and all the AI models that we showed you on the previous screen.
And they don't host those GPUs themselves. Other people are hosting them and just attaching to the Chutes API. Hey, you could use my GPU if you want.
Correct.
And they get rewarded for that in Chutes tokens.
In Chutes alpha tokens. Correct.
And now let's say I'm a user though of Chutes. So I want to make, Chutes is going to help me using all of these DeepSeeks and all these GPUs. Chutes could help me make an AI model, like an AI front end to my, like a customer service chatbot, for instance. So how do I actually use Chutes?
I'm going through their flow now. Their front door, you were describing like front doors are really important. Their front door is actually really nice. And again, this is like a developer product. So you want to be a developer or someone a little bit more technical to really use this. But let's just say we go in there, we select a model, right? And then we want to run this and we want to do it in private, and we'll do it with one GPU. So that's auto selected. And I need a developer account. So I've got to create a developer account. See, this is where things get a little technical. They're charging you some money to create a developer account. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And so I wish they could price this in fiat dollars.
I agree.
And okay, it'll get converted into Tao. No problem. They can use Tao, but it's friction for me to now calculate how much I'm actually spending.
Totally agree with you. The Bittensor subnets should not be directly charging the users in the alpha token or in Tao. They need to make it super dead simple. Charge the person, get Apple Pay. I double click my Apple Pay, I can buy the thing or I can use it. I can check out with my American Express card. I can check out with my Visa card or my MasterCard. I can send a bank transfer if it's like $200,000 or something, but I'm usually just going to use my credit card or my debit card.
Yeah, like now I have to think like, oh, I got to get out my wallet with my Tao in it. Like that's nobody's going to do that. Very few people own Tao versus the number of people who own dollars.
Yeah. There's only maybe 200,000 people in the world that own Tao, which is a very tiny number. So that's Shoots. A lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
But then if I want to
Uh,
actually, so I once I sign up, I then upload my data or my FAQ for my customer service, and
yeah, I'm not a user of Shoots, so I don't think I would be the right person to explain. Some of our engineering team would be a better spokesperson for this subnet, because we actually do use 64 on Tao app. For example, we go back to Tao app and we go to Savant. We have an AI built into Tao app. We can say, what is the historical price trend of subnet 89 over the past month? And Savant is calling DeepSeek hosted on Subnet 64 by a miner of Subnet 64 to actually generate this answer
why didn't
for
you just call DeepSeek directly? I mean, I don't even know if that's possible. Like, is there a home for DeepSeek where there's an API?
no. It's a software like Linux or MySQL. You've got to run it yourself in order to actually get the value from it, right? So you can run it on a server somewhere that someone else controls. You can get it through a SaaS API. You can run it on your own EC2 instance or on your own hardware or your Raspberry Pi. But you've got to run DeepSeek. You've got to run DeepSeek.
So in this case, you didn't have to run it. You're just running. You have a connection with Chutes, and like you set up your own chute.
Correct. We are going through Open Router, and Open Router has APIs for all the top models. And if you go check out DeepSeek V3, DeepSeek V3 has a significant provider called Chutes, and they're serving tens of billions of tokens per day. There's also Targon, and Targon is hosting almost 10 billion tokens of R1 and V3 per day. These are really gigantic numbers. If we go look at DeepSeek and then the top providers, this is the DeepSeek website on OpenRouter, like DeepSeek R1, O52, free hosting. The number two providers are Bittensor Subnet 64, which is Chutes, and the second provider is Targon, which is Bittensor Subnet 4.
And so are there a lot of people then like Tao.app, like your website? Are there a lot of
Yes.
people then who are already using Chutes and getting served these 10 billion tokens a day?
I would wager hundreds of companies and hundreds of thousands of people. Yes.
And it's interesting because it wouldn't be like, oh, I've got to use Chutes to make my customer service chatbot or whatever. I think there's not enough kind of like obviously you have to know about Tao and Bittensor and then Chutes to even begin to use this, as opposed to it just being like, oh yeah, I should use Chutes. Like Chutes should almost conceptually stand on its own as a company,
Totally agree. Totally agree. And
which means there's a lot of potential.
a lot of potential. You could have that company be worth tens of billions of dollars, or you could have a company that uses the Chutes intelligence be worth hundreds of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars.
Well, what do you mean?
Because Meta vertically integrates. Meta's worth $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Meta owns WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook feed, AI, AR, VR, and a bunch of other investments that are smaller. You add all that up, they are transforming all of these products to be AI native and AI first. The number one cost item for Meta is computational expansion and AI talent. Like those two line items. Scaling AI, right? 60. Oh, we just bought a company called Scale AI as well.
Yeah, for 15 billion.
It was a dividend because they didn't want to get blocked by antitrust. And so it was an inside deal to mitigate, you know, FTC shenanigans. And so Zuck's principal bottleneck is compute and AI talent. No single company on the planet has a monopoly on AI talent in the same way that no single company on the planet has a monopoly on intelligence or on the ingenuity of people or on the creativity of people. No one has a monopoly on that. People claim that that's the case in America, in the West. I disagree. All of the top AI papers are written by Chinese people in China. Okay. So you're delusional if you think the United States has a monopoly on talent. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The open source community has proven this since time immemorial, since the beginning of open source free software in the 80s and 90s. Open source has proven that the only monopoly on talent is this fairly mid-sized spinning rock in space called Earth. That thing has a monopoly on talent, not a country or a company. And so Bittensor is designed for this. It says you have a permissionless reward to create the most useful and valuable commodities for your fellow humans and maybe for future species of intelligence. And I think that will attract more talent and more compute than any private company could in their wildest dreams.
Okay, so once again, I'll just push back a little. So Chutes right now is whatever, worth $10 million, $9 million, something like that. I forget what you said, but their potential competition, like if they were not on Bittensor, they could be worth maybe $500 million with the kind of numbers they're putting up.
The market cap is incredibly low. It's an $88 million market cap.
Would they get frustrated with that?
I think Chutes is just getting started. It's very young. And I think if you looked at Bitcoin's progress for the first decade, it was dismissed and regarded as a scam by almost everyone until it wasn't. And now all the largest asset managers in the world are saying you need to own some Bitcoin. Larry Fink from BlackRock or Blackstone, I can never remember.
BlackRock,
He's saying, yeah, everyone buy Bitcoin. It should be a staple in the portfolio. I wouldn't be surprised if we see $1 million. Larry is saying this all the time.
Well, you know what the tipping point was for the internet? Like, if you think back, what was the year that everyone finally stopped saying the internet, the web is a fad, or, oh, I would never put my credit card into the internet, it would get stolen by hackers. The tipping point, I really think, was around 2004 and 2005. And what happened that year was that there was 1 billion users worldwide. That was the first time we tipped over 1 billion users worldwide. And so, and Bitcoin right now, we're almost at that point. Like, a lot of people still say it's a fad, but then you have 6 cabinet members own Bitcoin and Larry Fink and so on. I think we're at like 400 million users worldwide. It's not quite at that billion person point yet. Now, it'll be interesting because Bittensor, if you say not just only the people who hold Tao, but the people who actually use and don't even realize that they're using Chutes on some website, they don't even realize it. Like on Tao.app, I didn't realize I was using Chutes by typing into that prompt box. So it's probably like many millions, but not yet close to the billion point. But the point is, it's always going to get bigger from this point. It's hit escape velocity.
But to your point, we're still so far from mainstream saturation of populations on every continent, right? Like 300 million. I was just reflecting on the most successful technology exit acquisition of all time, which is YouTube. And Google acquired YouTube for 1.65 billion in stock in 2006, October 2006. I know this because both founders of YouTube are investors of mine, which I'm very grateful for, and they're really talented people. And then when they sold, they had 20 million users or something. YouTube has 2.7 billion active users now and produces 40 billion in annual revenue for Alphabet. 40 billion. Okay. Very profitable. By the way, the biggest and most valuable training data set for AI in the entire planet is the video data on YouTube. The most valuable, bar none. That is the most valuable training data. Elon would need to scale his compute by 50 times to be able to train on the corpus of training data on YouTube. So it is a gigantic. And so stock appreciation adjusted, Google would have paid 25 billion to buy YouTube today. That's still a steal. That's a steal.
Yeah, because if you think about it, what was the limiting factor that YouTube had that forced them to sell to Google back in whenever it was? They didn't have they had to host all these servers to host all their videos. They couldn't afford to do it. And so this is the decentralized moment where you don't have to host anything now.
They also were forced to sell because they were getting sued into oblivion by IP, protection lawsuits and all the lawyers, because people would upload, music and songs and videos and stuff. They were violating. They'll get like hundreds of takedown notices every month or something. And when Google basically convinced them to sell, like, look, we have a lot of lawyers at Google.
Yeah, Google's the number one lobbyist in Washington, D.C.
So they said to Chad and Steve, relax, we can take care of it, and we will scale YouTube to, the promised land, which they did. They did very, very successfully. But 2.7 billion active users is 10 times more than the number of people who hold Bitcoin, roughly. 10 times more. Active users, though, that's like every month actively you watch a couple of YouTube videos. Like, wow. 2.7 billion. That is a lot. We are very early with Bitcoin, very early. And with Bittensor, we are where Bitcoin was in 2012, 2013.
Yeah, because if you think about it, with Bitcoin back then, it was hard to build an application that used Bitcoin. I tried to make a Bitcoin only store at that time in 2013, and I was selling one product, and I was selling a book I wrote, and it was I couldn't figure it out. And I'm a developer, and I called Coinbase. They couldn't help me. I called Coinbase's VCs. I called Fred Wilson. He's like, boy, they should really be able to explain this. But nobody could. I finally found a developer who could help me, and I did it, and sold 60 copies of my book for 1/10 of a Bitcoin at that time. And then I would email them a PDF. So it's like they spent $10,000 for a PDF of my book in today's dollars. But yeah, I sort of feel like BitTensor's kind of hit that. It's sort of hit the point where this is a real thing. It's not just a fad, and and it's got. I would say it's got many more use cases right now than Bitcoin had in 2013. So it's hit this sort of escape velocity, but still people just don't know about it, because even when you go to Chutes just now, which is the most popular subnet, aka company on Bittensor, it's hard to use. It's hard to figure out. I needed my Tao wallet address and pointed here, and that's where I think these subnets are going to take the next step, because, like you said, there's 128 companies on Bittensor, and they're incredibly useful. Chutes is delivering 10 billion tokens a day, but still needs to evangelize a bit more.
150 billion tokens a day, actually.
150 billion. That's a lot. Yeah. It's like over 4.5 trillion tokens. Or no, what is that? Yeah.
4 trillion a month, 5 trillion a month. Google was doing 10 trillion a month 1 year ago. Sundar just announced they're doing 500 trillion a month now. They grew 50x, right? Is that 50x? Yeah, I think that's 50x.
Yeah.
That's impressive. But Google overall a year ago was doing roughly 2 times more than Chutes will do this month. Wow, that's impressive. And Chutes did not exist 6 months ago. And so it's growing like this. It's growing hyperbolic.
So here's a question that a lot of people ask, which is, okay, let's say Chutes is super successful and is worth billions. How does that translate into an increase in the price of Tao?
People who want to use the commodity of the subnet, they have to transact and denominate the use and the purchase of the access to that through Tao, because all of the alpha tokens on the subnets are denominated in Tao. So people shouldn't know that, or they shouldn't have to even think about that. You should just be, I got some Ethereum, I got some Bitcoin, I got some USDT, some USDC, or I've got cash fiat. I want to be able to use subnet. I don't want to worry about the Tau alpha conversion thing. I just want to use it. That will happen. But basically provide liquidity to any of the subnets, you stake Tau, and there's a finite amount of Tau in circulation. So I think what people will realize, this is going to be pretty trippy, but what people will realize is they're going to be like, financialization to a degree and to an extent of maybe perversion and manipulation and just extreme speculation that we have not seen in the history of digital assets, for sure. By the way, including Bitcoin. And then things will probably start to see some and discover some price equilibrium. But Tau, I think, will be more valuable than Bitcoin. I think it'll be worth a lot more than Bitcoin. I think Tau will be worth 5 to 10 times Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin will succeed. I really believe Bitcoin is super important for its use case. But the target, like for Bitcoin, is replace gold, replace the dollar. We're talking 100 trillion, 120 trillion, right? So like maybe 50x from here, maybe 50x from here. Bittensor from here is a million X. I don't know. I can't see, what's the differential on the value of a stored value medium of exchange currency for humanity versus what's the price and the value of a network that continuously produces more and more valuable, useful digital commodities across every possible domain. It's a pretty big gap.
It's interesting. It's an important thing you said. For Bitcoin is valuable for its use case, and I think what's it's coming down to is that its use case is as a store of value. Let's replace gold as a store of value just in case the dollar collapses, and we see this in countries like Argentina or Iran. When their currencies start to collapse, Bitcoin spikes up. And so yes, it has this use case of protecting people against bad currencies, which potentially the dollar could get to, who knows. But Bittensor, and this is going to sound almost too extreme, but I'm going to stand by it. Bittensor is a pure form of capitalism. Bittensor not replaces, but is the capitalism model. Basically, you have capitalism. Any company is people. There's three groups. There's people who have a commodity. There's people who need that commodity, like Uber is an example. People who have empty seats in their car, and then there are people who want to ride on those empty seats. And then Bittensor in the middle, any company in the middle provides an incentive mechanism so one side meets the other side, and all problems are handled, and transactions are done, and communications happen. So it doesn't even, I didn't even use the word currency. It's just capitalism is about incentives to connect two groups of people who need each other. And that's what every company in the world is. And Bittensor emulates that on software in this very pure way.
It is the most expressive language of value in the history of languages of value, which principally the most popular one is capitalism. And we were on a barter trading system before capitalism. And so there's just this evolution. Bittensor is transforming and upgrading capitalism in the same way that Bitcoin is upgrading and transforming capital. Because capital is one of these ingredients of capitalism. You need the currency. You need the ability to express the number system, right? Whereas capitalism itself is this extremely complex and dynamic language where if you get the language design right, you have what's called equity value. And equity value is worth hundreds of trillions of dollars, maybe a quadrillion dollars. Capital worth a couple hundred trillion, maybe 150 trillion.
I'll give you the exact numbers. So there's $150 trillion worth of fiat currency on the planet. So
Okay.
potentially, if Bitcoin, which is worth 2 trillion, starts to really make inroads into replacing fiat currency, which it hasn't yet, it could go, like you said, it could go up 10x, 20x, 50x. But how much? There's two numbers that are important in terms of Bittensor. First off, there's $1.4 quadrillion worth of financial assets. So stocks, bonds, royalty streams, real estate. There's $1.4 quadrillion worth of financial assets. But now, if you can really think of what does it mean that we're going to create some new AI company? So there's invisible financial assets that haven't yet been created that could be $5 quadrillion more. And we're saying, like for instance, using Bittensor's incentive mechanism, you can create Uber. The miners could be the drivers. Okay. The validators are like, or the subnet is like Uber. It's going to say these drivers are good, these drivers are bad. And then you have users who are going to pay some form of capital into this to get rides with the drivers. So it's not even about AI. You could recreate Uber on Bittensor. I don't see why not. A decentralized, you can make it even a peer-to-peer Uber.
Yes, absolutely. Every centralized network, like that example, like a marketplace or social app or ride sharing, any of these networks, any of these centralized networks could be transformed into decentralized networks through the power of the Tensor subnet incentives. And furthermore, I mean, like you've got to think of every industry is being transformed by technology and by software. But the language of the business models of those industries is this thing called capitalism and shares and stock compensation and equity and, equity markets and venture capital, private equity and public equity and derivatives and all the shit. Very messy, very error prone, very slow, just horribly inefficient, horribly. I speak at the entering my 8th year as a venture capitalist, having invested a bunch of money, have a lot of startups and stuff. It is such a mess. Oh my God. Very bad. And by the way, financial inclusion, there's maybe 100 people in the world in venture capital that are doing the investing that really benefit from the returns on the investing side. On the limited partner side, it's more, but on the people that actually do the investing and stuff, wow, that is crazy. So Bittensor can upgrade so many things about the totality of industry, not just like money management stuff, but every possible industrial category getting transformed by technology. Mark Andreessen famously says, software is eating the world. All these technologies are getting transformed to become software-based. Now, AI is eating software. All the software is getting retrained and re-implemented as a neural network. Guess what's going to happen with neural networks? They're going to be transformed from centralized neural networks in Elon's data center in Tennessee and Google's data centers around the world and company controlled. By the way, Google's controlled by just two guys. I mean, they're good people, but there's two guys. God's scary. Meta's controlled by one guy. Elon controls XAI. He also controls Tesla. He also controls SpaceX. Do you know SpaceX has an asset, which is the fastest growing business in history? Pretty sure his $300 subscription that he announced this morning is going to grow pretty fast too. But let's just focus on Starlink. Starlink went from 0 to 50 million subscribers in 2 years. Each subscriber pays like hundreds to thousands of dollars, right? The business went from 0 to tens of billions in revenue faster than OpenAI went from 0 to 10. Way faster. And this is Elon taking his Starship rockets and shooting gigantic racks full of satellites, shooting more of them in orbit. By the way, telling the whole world as he's doing it, he's like, we're really proud, we're launching more. Starlink can totally replace the entire internet on the planet. And Elon controls the entire thing.
I mean, I'm using Starlink right now.
Elon controls the entire thing. Elon controls the entire thing. One guy. This is very important for people to understand. And by the way, I'm an Elon fan. I like Elon. I think he's very duplicitous and messy and crazy in a lot of ways, which I think he's aware. I think he's a self-aware guy. I think he's very self-aware. I'm a big fan of his. I do not want all of humanity controlled by one fucking guy. Absolutely not.
Yeah, and to your point, like let's say I have the 30 million anonymized, private patient records, and I want to create an AI model so that when there's a new patient, I could run it through my AI model based on the 20 million patient records, and this person has a sore knee and a headache, maybe he has brain cancer, and the AI model spits out. So I want to be able, to your point, I want to be able to own that, to keep the data and own the entire model and the software. And so not being reliant on OpenAI or 50,000 NVIDIA GPUs or whatever it would take to train my model is important to me. And also being able to access all the resources that a Bittensor could provide to create my AI model to serve my patients. This is important to me. It would be too expensive. Using the, I don't even know how I would do it, honestly, using OpenAI. I know how to do it using Bittensor. I would use some combination of the Subnets, Chutes, gradients, Targon, one of the compute, Celium for the compute, I think they do it. So, I could figure it out, and I don't need to have that much technical expertise.
I believe Bittensor can help Elon and OpenAI and Microsoft and a lot of the biggest technology companies in the world struggling, trying really hard, spending tons of money to acquire more compute and to acquire more talent. The whole talent war between Meta and OpenAI right now is kind of laughable. And why are you overpaying people? You're overpaying people, like ridiculously so. You don't need to do that. We can all benefit from them together as humanity, and we can get to the promised land much faster and more efficiently. And those power hungry, like magnets of power, which are kind of, in front of us, like we know who they are. It's Tesla and Elon. It's Google, it's Microsoft, it's Meta, Apple, maybe a couple of other companies. Less than 10 companies. Humanity deserves a solution for centralized power monopolies. We deserve a solution. Bittensor is the solution.
And so, okay, on this point, let's tease, like we want to do more episodes of this. What do we want to say is like the format? Like, each episode, I could say maybe we'll introduce more subnets and more capabilities. Maybe we'll introduce more ways you could start your own AI company using the resources Bittensor supplies. And by the way, it's not because we want you to use Bittensor. It's because this is the only way I know of you can easily build an AI company as cheaply as possible. Like, how else would you build an AI company as cheaply as possible? You can't hire an AI programmer now because Facebook's paying them $100 million or whatever. So you just can't do it.
You can't do it. You're correct. Nope. It's not possible.
So, like, I would have to use Bittensor to create an AI company, or if I'm an AI entrepreneur living in Ohio or whatever, and not one of the cool kids in Silicon Valley, like you probably are.
For the record, I am one of those super cool kids. The vast majority of people are not me. And you are absolutely right, James, when you say the normal people cannot compete. That is impossible. Do not even try. But through the power of Bittensor, actually, I think you may be able to compete, which is pretty crazy. That's actually pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you're already seeing it. Again, each subnet's a company, and they're quietly serving up billions of answers a month. So anyway, so is there anything else I can add to the format? What else do you think?
I am very excited to have these conversations, James, and I think we will have no shortage of extremely exciting things to talk about, both in terms of the world events in AI and how Bittensor is related to those events in deep and meaningful ways.
Excellent.